The Unfiltered by Jade.
Jade. Welcome to The Unfiltered by Jade, where we educate, empower, and entertain. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, download, donate, and make everybody know about this.
Beats by RB Records.
Shopping assistance, your style, your budget. Our services include online and local shopping for individuals and businesses, personal shopping, purchasing of company and office supplies, importing and exporting small packages across Jamaica and worldwide, and helping you find unique gifts and items for all events and occasions. Contact us at 876-919-5195 or shoppingassistance2015@gmail.com. Shopping Assistance, your style, your budget.
Welcome back to The Unfiltered by Jade. Today we have with us here a special guest. Her name is Dr. Sola, Tugun-Butler, transformational coach, licensed clinical therapist, a professional speaker, educator, world traveler, online course creator, and entrepreneur. Today we're going to speak about navigating burnout as a professional, and there are many of us out there who will need this information because a lot of us are burnt out and don't know how to navigate it. So hi, Dr. Butler.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I think I'm going to enjoy this conversation with you today.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, Dr. Butler, what are some common misconceptions about burnout, and how can professionals differentiate between burnout and a typical job-related stress or fatigue?
Sure. So burnout can be defined as emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion as a result of persistent exposure to stress. So some of the common misconceptions that I've heard is that people will say it's just stress. Burnout is more than stress because we can never have a completely stress-free life. That's not possible. We will have stress from time to time.
Mhm.
The difference is that burnout is persistent. That is the difference. It's persistent feelings of being exhausted. It's impacting your ability to do your work effectively, and it's also impacting other areas of your life. So burnout is more than just stress. The difference is the persistence of it, where people just feel like it is very, very difficult to go from day to day because they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they feel like they're completely tapped out. So that is a major difference between stress and burnout.
Okay. What are some of the physical, emotional, and cognitive symptoms of burnout? And how can professionals recognize these signs in themselves and in their colleagues?
Sure. So we'll start with the physical. So one of the physical symptoms of burnout that people talk about is fatigue.
Mhm.
So like I mentioned earlier, they just feel like it's very difficult for them to get through the day. So they complain about being physically tired.
Mhm.
Another physical sign of burnout is people have headaches and migraines. So when we look at somebody who's burnt out, like some of the pictures that we see out there might be somebody trying to hold up their head. And it's because they feel this headache, this migraine that is coming on because of the feeling like there's so much work that they're unable to complete.
Right.
Another physical symptoms is gastrointestinal issues. People complain about having stomach pain, stomach ache is another one. People have high blood pressure, can be a physical symptom of burnout. Heart palpitations are another symptom of burnout. So burnout is not just mental or cognitive, and we'll talk more about some of those symptoms. It
Right.
also manifests itself physiologically. Your body is responding to what is going on, and these are some of the physiological symptoms of burnout.
Right.
Now, in terms of cognitive, people who are burnt out notice a change in their thought patterns. Their thought patterns become more negative and it becomes very dark. So
Mm,
they're noticing feelings of hopelessness. So they'll say things like, it's just not going to get better. What is the point of it all? And the scary part is sometimes it can get to the point of self harm where people are thinking, like, what's the point of being here anymore? So that is the change that people notice mentally, where their thought patterns become very negative. It also becomes very dark. Now, in terms of emotions, when we are burnt out, we're not tapping into our emotional health.
no.
So, emotional health is an awareness of your emotions, an awareness of what your emotions are telling you, because our emotions are storytellers. Now, when we are burnt out, we tend to bury our emotions, we tend to ignore them because we're so overwhelmed with everything else. And as a result, our emotions are coming out in unhealthy ways. So sometimes we're lashing out at other people, or we are anxious, we're depressed because we're not listening to our emotions and the message that they're trying to tell us.
Right. I so even question about that. For people who work, go to school, have a family, do all these activities and are trying to excel in their lives or to, reach a certain goal and they're always burnt out. What can how can they manage that?
The one word that I use in a way to prevent burnout and to minimize stress is the word balance.
Mm-hmm.
Life has to be a balance because there's so much demands for our time. So just like you said, some of us are working, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to school, we're raising family. There's so many demands for our time. And what tends to happen is that we carve out time for all of those things, but not for ourselves. And
Yes.
that's why it's not balanced. So self care has to be proactive and not preventative, where people wait till they're almost burnt out to now start taking care of themselves. So, one thing I teach my clients is that you matter and time for yourself matters. So, what is something that you could do every single day to have that balance? Where, yes, I take care of my studies, I do my work, I take care of myself, and I take care of my family. And what does that look like? Because the reality is that self care can be done in as little as 5 to 10 minutes each time.
Okay.
Because when we talk about self care, people are thinking 1 hour at the gym, 2 hours at the gym. But sometimes self care can be as little as 5 to 10 minutes by using
Mm,
some techniques that I teach my clients. And I say when we look at our calendar, just like we put in appointments, whether it's appointments to take the kids to swimming or maybe it's a project I need to work on, one thing I encourage my clients to do is also put in an appointment with yourself so that
mm,
you can practice a self care technique. Again, 5 to 10 minutes that can give you that reset that you need so you
yes.
can get through the rest of your day.
Yes. Prioritize yourself also.
Exactly. Exactly.
How does burnout impact professional performance, job satisfaction, and overall well being? And what are the potential long term consequences if left unaddressed?
Absolutely. So, what burnout tends to do is that because we are overwhelmed by persistent exposure to this stressor, we are not functioning at an optimum level.
Right.
So, what people notice in the workplace is that their work begins to suffer. So, it's what we call reduced performance. So, you notice a decline in your work performance, you notice a decline in your productivity, and your effectiveness, and you are not able to improve in that area no matter how much it's brought to the forefront for you. So you're aware of it, but you're just not able to take care of it. So you notice a reduced performance. The
Mhm.
other thing that people notice too is decreased satisfaction. You just notice that you are not satisfied or feeling accomplished from the work that you're doing. So people talk about hopelessness, they talk about disillusionment. They just feel like no matter what I do, I am not functioning at my optimum
Optimal
level.
level. Hmm.
Yes. And then because we're not functioning at an optimum level, it not only affects the work environment, because burnout is not just solely related to work, it begins to affect our interpersonal relationships. So
Yes.
we no longer have time for those relationships. Or we're noticing that we're isolating from others. I'm so exhausted. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so detached. I am not putting any energy into the relationships that really matter to me. And those relationships begin to suffer as well.
Mm-hmm.
That begins to increase those feelings of hopelessness and disillusionment,
Mm-hmm.
because you feel like in so many areas of my life, things are not the way that I would like for them to be.
Yeah. What struggles and coping mechanisms can professionals use to navigate burnout when it does occur? And how can they prioritize self care and well being in their daily lives? You gave us part of that in terms of scheduling time for ourselves.
Right.
But in terms of strategies for working professionals, how can they navigate this?
So for working professionals, time factor is important because a lot of professionals will tell me that they just don't feel like they have the time for
Mm-hmm.
self care. So, what I do is I teach self care techniques that can be done in as little as 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
So, one of my favorite techniques is called soothing with the senses. How can I use my senses to soothe myself? So, for example, looking at the senses, what can I hear that's very soothing to me? So, one thing I encourage people to do is maybe close your eyes and listen to music that's very soothing. So it could be, for example, some people like jazz music or Afro beats or bossa nova, whatever music you like, to just close your eyes and listen to the music. What can you see that is soothing to you? What can you look at that's soothing? So sometimes I encourage my clients to put in their work environment a picture or something that they love looking at that is very calming to them. So I have a client that has a picture of like the ocean. So whenever she's feeling stressed out, she'll take a minute and she'll look at that picture and maybe imagine herself being, at the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Or for myself, looking out my window and seeing the trees and the sky, that could be soothing. What can you taste that is soothing to you? Maybe a cup of jasmine tea, maybe cold water, something that can soothe that sense when it comes to taste. Also, what can you touch that is very soothing? So sometimes people have these stones that they put in their hands and they just rub it, and that stone is very soothing, or a piece of cloth that's cotton that's very soothing to you. Or right under my desk, I have a carpet, and sometimes I just run my feet along that carpet, and that can be very soothing.
Or a
So it's
stress
these, yeah,
ball.
a stress ball, exactly. You can take a stress ball and you can squeeze a stress ball, and that could be soothing to you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's taking those regular breaks. It's listening to your body. Our body has an amazing way of letting us know when we're tired and we're overwhelmed.
Yes.
So we want to listen to that. We want to listen mentally when you're noticing your thoughts. My thoughts are feeling very hopeless, or my thoughts are telling me that I'm overwhelmed. I do need to step back and take care of myself. And also our emotions. Emotions are storytellers. There are no bad emotions. I always say that. All emotions are good because they're there to tell you a story. And when we listen to the story might be telling us, like, hey, there's a buildup of frustration going on here. What is a healthy way that we can release frustration? So it's always making sure that self care is preventative. So we're doing it every day. So
Mm-hmm.
people are well aware of things that they need to do for physical health. Work out, eat healthy, see your doctor once a year. But sometimes people don't realize the same thing goes for self care. What am I doing every single day to stay on top of my physical health, my emotional health, and my cognitive health as well?
That's an important question to ask ourselves.
Exactly. It's a daily question to ask. What am I doing every day to take care of myself? It could be going for a quick walk, like a 5 minute walk. It could be watching a show that makes me laugh. So it's kind of planning your self care.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, I don't have time, most people have 5 minutes, most people have 10 minutes. I'm like, do it then. It could be maybe stretching, doing some stretches
Mm-hmm.
in 5 to 10 minutes. That can give you the reset that you need.
Instead of thinking big, think small. That's the first step.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Small and steady
Yes.
is
Small.
really important.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, for example, I'm noticing that there are more and more exercise routines that are 5 minutes and 8 minutes.
Yes.
And I thought that was amazing because
Yes.
more and more people, yes, are saying, I have 5 minutes.
Oh,
I have
yes.
8 minutes. I can do this in 5 minutes. And then they do it and they feel better because I've done them. I've had like
I
eight
have.
minutes.
I have.
Yes,
And I've seen a
exactly.
difference.
Absolutely. There's an app that I use where they have stretches that you could do as you're sitting at your desk, and it's 5 minutes.
Mm.
Yes, it's 5 minute stretches as you're sitting at your desk, using your chair to kind of stretch without having to get up. And because they're beginning to realize that people don't have maybe an hour or
Right.
2 hours, but they
Right.
can do this in 5 minutes
5 minutes. Mm-hmm.
or 8 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and get like the reset that they need to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get through the rest of their day.
Yes. I love that. How can professionals create a supportive work environment that promotes open communication, work life balance, and mental health awareness to prevent burnout among colleagues?
That is a great question. And when it comes to organizations and corporations, the first thing I always want to ask is what is the culture? What is the culture of the work environment? Because if a culture is set in which people feel safe to come forward if they are feeling burnt out or if they're struggling with mental health issues, then they're more likely to come forward.
Yes.
However, if corporations create an environment in which people are punished for being burnt out or for having mental health concerns, then they are less likely to come forward and
Yes.
it will impact their work productivity.
Yes.
So, for example, I've had people say to me that my work environment is the first one in, the last one out.
Mm.
So, in that kind of work environment, it becomes very difficult to open up about the fact that you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people say to me, if I want to take a personal day or if I want to take a vacation, it is very much frowned upon to do that because the idea is that work is your life and you put everything else behind and work comes first. So
Mm-hmm.
even your self-care goes behind that.
Yes.
So that's one thing I do in my work at corporations. What is the work culture? What are the beliefs and values that you set forward in your work environment? Now, if you set an environment where people feel safe, then you can provide them with the resources that they need to prevent burnout.
Yes.
So some corporations, for example, have coaches that their employees can talk to, or therapists or mental health professionals that they could talk to if they feel that they're on the verge of burnout. They
Mm-hmm.
encourage their employees to take the day off. Sometimes they call this wellness days or mental health days.
Yes.
That if you just need a day to rest, go ahead and do so. And they lead by example. They lead by example, and their employees see that. They have trainings and workshops regularly about self care and self care techniques that their employees can employ. So, for example, I've done this for corporations where we talk about self care, we talk about techniques that they can use, reaching out for professional help, and knowing that there is no shame in reaching out for professional help if I feel like I am burning out, because
Yes.
it does not go away unless you use these tools and techniques. So knowing that it's okay to do so, or some people might reach out to a support group of other professionals to learn from others and learn from the group leader how they can prevent burnout and minimize stress. But it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to the work culture. And I always ask corporations to ask themselves that question. What kind of culture are you creating that could potentially either lead people to burnout or minimize stress and prevent burnout? That's a very important question
It
for
is.
these corporations and organizations to ask themselves.
It is. And what's important also is that if organizations are creating an atmosphere for their workers to help to minimize stress and prevent burnout, they're also helping the workplace to thrive.
Yes, then work productivity goes up.
Yes.
It absolutely does. I remember years ago, I used to work for an organization, and the turnover rate in this department was practically zero because the director would start every meeting with, who's taking a day off? And if you did not want to take a day off, if she sensed that you were feeling stressed, she would say, you need to take a day off. Make it a 3-day weekend, because she understood the line of work that we were doing could potentially put us on the path to burnout. So she
Nice.
was always asking, take a day off, take your vacation. You need time for yourself. You need to replenish. And as a result of that, the turnover rate in her department was practically zero. None of us
Nice.
left.
Nice.
because we felt that she was invested in our well-being on
Yes.
so many levels.
Yes. That's important.
Yes,
It's important
absolutely.
when workers believe that their, the heads are invested in them.
Yes, absolutely. And she took vacations and she made sure that we took them. She never made us feel bad to take vacations because she felt that when you have, workers, employees who take care of themselves, then they show up as their best selves
Yes. Oh
to
yes.
do the
To
work.
do the
But
work.
when they're burnt out, then they're not functioning at the optimum level and the work performance will suffer.
Definitely will. What advice would you give to professionals who may be experiencing burnout or struggling to cope with the demands of their profession? And how can they seek help and support from colleagues, mentors, or mental health professionals?
Yes, that's a great question. The number one thing that I always advise people to do is to admit that they are overwhelmed and they are burnt out, and to know that there is no shame in it. Because sometimes people feel ashamed or embarrassed to seek help because they feel like burnout is an indication of weakness. And I tell
Mm,
people, when you realize that you are burnt out, that is a strength. That is a
mm,
strength, and it's okay to ask for help because we all need help from time to time. So, one thing I advise people to do is when you feel like you are on the verge of burnout, to be able to reach out to the resources around you to get the support and the help that you need, and that there is no shame in being able to do so. The other thing that I advise is if you're feeling overwhelmed, but you're saying, I'm not quite burning out yet, then what I would say is you want to look for balance.
yes.
What does balance look like? And balance is very subjective because it's different for each person. And what are some self care tools that I can now incorporate into my daily schedule to take care of myself so I do not get to the point where I burn out? So it's looking at those different self care tools out there and then seeing what works for you and then incorporating that into the schedule. So Jay, just like you and I talked about, like they have these 5-minute workouts, they have these 8-minute workouts. That might be something I want to incorporate. There's deep breathing techniques I might want to incorporate. There's soothing with the senses. So looking at self-care tools and deciding what's going to work best for me. The other thing that I advise too is having healthy boundaries. Because sometimes what puts us on the path to burnout is the need to say yes to everything,
Mm,
the need to put ourselves on the back burner. And it realizing that it is okay to say no, it is okay to say not right now if it's going to overwhelm my capacity to function. Because boundaries and burnout are very much correlated. Because in my work with clients, I realize they struggle with setting those boundaries. So even though they're already overwhelmed, they'll say yes to things.
yes.
And then they realize I'm overwhelmed. They're angry. They're feeling resentful. I shouldn't have said yes. But because of the need to please others, they say yes to the detriment of themselves as opposed to looking for a balance. So in my work with my clients, I say to them, if it's hard for you to say no, maybe you can say not right now.
Okay.
So it could be, you know what, I would love to help you with this,
But not right now.
but not right now. How about next weekend? I'm free next weekend. I'll be able to help you then. That particular statement is balance
Okay.
because I'm also putting myself first. Because if I go ahead and say yes, now I'm overwhelmed and I could potentially burn out because I said yes
Yes.
instead of having more of a balance in the situation.
Awesome. That's good. I often also tell people sometimes it's okay to say no without feeling bad about it.
Yes.
Sometimes we have to say no for our best selves.
Absolutely. And we should feel okay saying no. Same thing at work if we're feeling really overwhelmed with the work that we have. And again, it depends on the work environment. It might involve having a conversation with our manager and seeing how we can balance this as much as possible. Because if we continue the way that we're going, eventually we're not going to be able to do anything.
Yes.
And what I say is if we don't listen to our bodies will force us to listen.
Oh, it will.
It will force us. People
Force
talk
us
about
to, we're gonna have to listen, whether
we're
we
gonna
like
have
it
to
or
listen.
not.
Yes, people talk about feeling sick or
Mm-hmm.
tired, and they're broken down because the body's been telling them, "Hey, We need to take a break. We need to take a break. And we've pushed it aside. And eventually your body will force you to
To
take that
take a
break.
break. Let's not allow it to reach that stage before we decide to take a break
Exactly.
to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Dr. Butler, where is it that we can find you if it is that we want to connect with you?
Yes, if you would like to find me, the best way to reach out to me is my website. My website is www.transformative.cc. If you would like to know more about my program, Transformative Women, and we focus specifically on techniques that we can use to transform our physical, emotional, and mental health so we do not find ourselves on the path to burnout.
Love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Butler.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here.
Yes, thank you so much, even for giving us some insights in how to deal with burnout, even as professionals. Many times we're struggling because we don't know how to balance. But you have given us some tools that we can use. And if it is that our listeners out there need to connect with you to learn more, to be coached by you, they can also do that.
Absolutely. Yes, they can reach out, and the coaching program is a combination of live coaching sessions as well as a virtual classroom to make sure that we support each other as professionals to ensure that we are the best that we want to be in all areas of life.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much again. And thank you to our listeners for continuing to listen to The Unfiltered by Jade. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday. Thank you.